Fashion is very much a vital element of human existence. Throughout history, fashion fads and trends have dominated appearances and looks. And while the importance of fashion in going beyond the aesthetics is gaining ground in the modern day, people of earlier times used to accord a somewhat ridiculous importance to style. In fact, beauty was so obsessed about that people went to unusual extents to be and look fashionable. Be it starkly outrageous or outright fatal manifestations, fashion trends over the ages have been really bizarre instances of extremities. They say beauty is pain, and anyone who wants to be beautiful must pay the cost. Keeping up with the latest trends means that one must be prepared to suffer a bit to achieve the results. Some of the fashion trends throughout the history were shockingly dangerous, truly agonizing, and many of them even proved to be fatal in numerous cases. If we look back to the beauty practices of the past, these modern fashion trends seem like child's play by comparison. So, just take a deep breath and witness some of the deadliest fashion trends throughout the history. Crinoline, invented by R.C. Milliot and introduced in the summer of 1856. The crinoline is among the most dangerous fashion trends in the history. It is said that this deadly Victorian fashion garment killed around 3,000 women after suffering itchy horsehair petticoats to make dresses poof out like cupcakes. Women of the late 1800s welcomed the steel cage crinoline. Mass-produced and worn by ladies of all classes, the contraption stood apart from the wearer's body like an exoskeleton. Unfortunately, the crinolines also acted as chimney flues if a skirt caught fire, with the air trapped beneath making flames spread faster. Newspapers of the era were filled with accounts of crinoline-related deaths. Among them was Archduchess Matilda of Austria. When her father entered the room unexpectedly, the Archduchess hid the illicit cigarette she was smoking behind her back and subsequently burned to death in front of her family. Among the most notable victims were also William Wilde's illegitimate daughters, Emily and Mary, who died in agony after their swirling crinoline skirts caught fire. However, crinolines used to be made up of layers of inflammable material, which was a sure-shot invitation for a disaster. Going free in one of those crinolines led many women to be burnt alive or even being seriously injured by the flaring intensity that led to be easily caught and trampled by the winds. Corsets. No woman in the world will tell you that she doesn't want to have a slim waist. However, having a tiny waist is not a new fashion trend. Corsets were and still are one of the most extreme manifestations of fashion in the human psyche. While slipping into these corsets are an ordeal because of their almost non-existent diameter, women and even men turned into this fashion equipment with surprising frequency. Considered by many to be one of the most dangerous fashion trends, the corset restricted women's breathing, which often led to fainting. However, fainting wasn't the worst thing that could happen to a woman trying to keep pace with the fashion at the time. Internal organs were also subject to damage as they were forced to shift from their natural position, and this could eventually lead to internal bleeding. Broken ribs, digestive problems, hysteria, and constipation are just a microscopic part of nearly 100 diseases attributed to corset wearing. The Victorian era corset was a heavy-duty clothing apparatus capable of constricting a person's waist down to a dainty 17 inches. A slim midsection and an hourglass figure were all the rage in the 19th century Europe. No one expected the fashionable corsets to be linked to deaths, yet that is exactly what happened. Women died. Newspapers also reported on corset deaths regularly. They also frequently warned corset wearers of the dangers lacing them too tightly. Perhaps one of the most well-publicized and interesting of death by corset cases happened on 26 December 1894. Actress Kitty Tyrrell and her actor husband Harry Evans were performing in Dick Whittington and His Cat at the Elephant and Castle Theatre in London. It was the first show of the season, and after completing act, Kitty barely made it off stage before she collapsed. Her husband was called, and when he arrived at her side, she told him to unfasten the stays. The unconscious Kitty was then carried to a dressing room. Her corset was unlaced and salts given, but unfortunately she could not be revived, and by the time the doctor arrived, he announced that there was nothing he could do. Kitty had died. The audience, of course, knew nothing of the tragedy playing out backstage because the show continued without a hint that anything was wrong. In fact, even events performed as expected. The hobble skirt, a fashion trend from the early 20th century in which a skirt was tightly gathered around the wearer's calves and was likely inspired by one of the first women to take flight. In 1908, the Wright brothers' business agent, Mrs. Edith Berg, accompanied the aviators on flights, but her ankle-length skirt had to be bound with twine so as not to catch on any mechanical parts. Over the next few years, this bound hobble skirt became the height of fashion, even though it kept its wearer from being able to walk effectively. In 1910, in Erie, New York, 18-year-old Ida Goetz's skirt caused her to stumble while crossing a bridge. She fell over the side and broke several limbs. Another woman at a French racetrack was trampled to death after a horse bolted through the crowd and she could not outrun it because of her hobble skirt. Scarf. In 1927, American dancer Isadora Duncan climbed into a convertible in Nice, France, with her signature long scarf draped around her neck. "Goodbye, my friends, I'm off to glory," she exclaimed. Minutes later, she was dead, violently strangled when the scarf's fringes caught between the spokes of a wheel. Sadder still is the fact that the scarf was given to her by a friend as a gift to cheer her up on the anniversary of her son Patrick's birth. The 3-year-old had died along with his sister when the car they were in rolled into the Seine. Arsenic dress. In the 1800s, a green dress dyed with arsenic-based pigments was a dress to die for, literally. This high-toxic emerald green crystalline powder, known as Paris green, was used on everything from curtains to dresses. These green dresses were very popular and widely worn until doctors came to a conclusion that people who wore the dresses died early. This arsenic-based pigment used on the dresses in the 1800s slowly released arsenic into the skin and caused sores, scabs, diarrhea, headaches, and eventually led to cancer. The Victorians had quite a complicated relationship with the arsenic. Britain even passed 2 different bills that restricted how much arsenic an individual could obtain. But in a key oversight, that legislation didn't account for industrial use. People who made artificial flowers, for instance, were at risk of taking in arsenic-laced powder used to pigment the fake leaves. In 1861, flower maker Matilda Scherer even died a painful death after ingesting too much of the stuff over the course of a short career. Starched collars. Fashion for men in the 19th century was strongly invested in the high collar trend. According to Brooks Brothers, the detachable collar was invented by New York housewife Hannah Lord Montague in 1825. Sick of laundering her husband's shirts just when the collar got dirty, she realized that she could simply create a separate collar that kept her husband looking tidy while sparing her extra washing. Ultimately, highly starched collars became all the rage. In 1888, one John Cruetsey was found dead in a city park, having apparently gotten drunk then passed out on a bench. When his head fell forward, his fashionable collar cut off his breathing. In 1900, another unfortunate victim was found in his bed, still wearing his collar. The cause of death was determined to be a collar so tight that it choked him and caused bleeding in his brain. So that's it for today's video. I hope that you liked it. If you liked, then please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to our channel. Till then, I'll be taking leave. We'll meet in another interesting video on another interesting topic. Thank you so much for watching. You take very good care of yourself.